Even if you trust someone, right, personally, on paper, it should probably look like you don't on both sides because things change. And in business, you want to make sure that you protect yourself every opportunity that you get. But life would definitely be less fruitful without your mental health. But don't forget about your body. Your body is important. When your mom was pregnant, they was checking if she was actually pregnant. They checked for a heartbeat. They didn't check for brain function. Your body is important. Your heart is not in your head. What we don't want to do is we don't want to forget about our bodies. And again, in a society that's conditioning us that your mind is the only thing that matters, it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to feel as if your body is just a means of transportation for your head, and not that your body is something that should be catered to. It's not just intelligence. We need wisdom. It's not just being smart. We need the wisdom. What is wisdom? Why is it not being smart? Why is it not just being intelligent? When I got a 30 on that exam, I felt the hunger that I had never felt before. Prior to failing that exam, that was the best thing that could have happened to me in my collegiate experience. That inspired me to stay up 3 days in a row. No coffee, no Adderall, no anything, not a sugar. But there's some people who are creative, they don't know what they want to be creative in, and they end up being creative in business. It takes creativity to be a good marketer. It takes creativity to be a successful entrepreneur in general. So you don't have to play an instrument, make a beat, shoot a music video, write a verse, play with different fabrics and stitch them together in a certain way to see what you can come up with. That's not the only type of creative there is. Go to the store, go try a Rolex on. You can't afford it yet, just try it. Don't just imagine it on your wrist, go actually have it on your wrist. Have the conversation with them, have them give you some champagne and let you think about it. You knew you couldn't afford it when you walked in. It was about the experience. Now that you've had that white glove experience, you're gonna want it again. When someone treats you normally, it's gonna feel offensive to you, quite possibly. Because for the first time in your life, you experience respect. Chances are you're gonna want that again. The fake it till you make it concept never really works, holistically. What you can do is face it till you make it. Face the fact that you're not there until you are there. And so when you are there, it's undeniable. And you made it there being who you really are. That's what really making it is. If you get to a certain position, being someone that you aren't, you didn't make it. The character that you created did. You did not.
Sometimes you hear things like you gotta be stoic, or like a Jordan Peterson saying you gotta walk with your shoulders back. What if you're not that type of person that does that, but you are trying to keep that up as a persona?
There's really no future in front. Eventually it catches up to you. And the worst way that it can possibly catch up to you is you not being happy. Even, let's say it works. Let's say the people around you fall for it. You are gonna know that it's not true eventually. And eventually, whatever the benefit is, won't be worth it. And so then you have a conflict. Am I going to keep this persona that I've created? Or am I going to let it go? What could potentially be even worse than that is losing yourself in a persona. Like adopting that persona and doing it so well that you start to believe you're actually that person. The reason why that's worse is because later, when it actually catches up to you, when there's some type of internal conflict, you don't remember who you are, so you don't know exactly how to resolve that internal conflict. I was hiding My uncle used to tell me this all the time, Anthony. He used to tell me, why do you go into rooms and shrink? Everybody feels your energy, and because they feel your energy, they expect you to come into the room and stand in a certain position. But you're so interested in making room for the other people that are in the room that you shrink. But they don't want you to shrink. And I realized that I was feeling awkward because I was standing in a position being someone that I wasn't. And they knew that I wasn't. And they knew that I knew that they knew. But yet I was still trying to stand in that position. So it was like telling someone a lie that you know knows you're lying, but you're still trying to finish the lie. It feels awkward. And they kind of looking at you like, bro, you really gonna go through with this? And I'm sitting there really trying to go through with it. Yeah. Subconsciously. Didn't realize that I had adopted this number 2 role because that felt safer to me. The fake it till you make it concept never really works holistically. What you can do is face it till you make it. Face the fact that you're not there until you are there. And so when you are there, it's undeniable. And you made it there being who you really are. That's what really making it is. If you get to a certain position, being someone that you aren't, you didn't make it. The character that you created did, but you did not. And I can imagine it being a very unfulfilling existence to be the creator of a character who is actually more successful at living the life that you want to live than you are. So I wouldn't advise people to fake it. I would advise them to figure out who they really are, what they really want, why they really want that. And align themselves with the laws of nature to actually acquire it. But not to fake it. I don't imagine that being fulfilling.
Oftentimes when I'm looking at like self-help content, it kind of speaks on traits that you can take over.
Yes.
Habits, can be anything, can be, let's say, certain responses to certain phrases.
Yes.
Certain tone of voice.
Yes.
Habits like making eye contact.
Yes.
Standing straight up with your shoulders back.
Yes.
I sometimes have a hard time maintaining these traits. And I don't know why. I don't know why. But if I were to, like, you being a coach, that's something I would want to, like, figure out. Like, why can't I maintain these things?
Because that's not who you are yet. You're showing up in a way that's not you. Maybe it's someone that you're becoming, but it's not who you are now. And it could potentially be someone that you don't even have an interest in being. You feel like you need to be that because that's the person that society values. And we all want to be someone of significance to some degree. But you want to be that person because they have something or access to something that you want. But you can get access or actually have that thing in a different way that actually speaks to you. Because that person is really that person who does that in the type of situations that you want to do it in. Because chances are there are some situations where you do that. You just probably don't give yourself credit for doing it in those situations because you don't value those situations enough, because you don't think those situations are going to give you the result that you want. But oftentimes, the thing that we want is really a metaphor for the feeling we want to have. So when you think about that thing you want, is it really that thing? And is that the only way that you can get that thing? I remember we were growing up and they had all of these magazines with all of these guys in front of them girls in front of them standing next to a car. Whatever the car may have been. It could have been a Ferrari, it could have been a Mustang, it could have been a Lamborghini, whatever. And the message implicitly was, if you get the car, you get the girl. So a lot of people who weren't even interested in cars became interested in cars because they were interested in that type of woman. So they thought. They got the car, they got the girl, and realized none of it was worth it. Because they weren't really after the car or the girl. They were after love. They just thought that they had to be significant in order to actually get the love. If I'm not important to you, how can you ever love me? I have to do something that brings about significance in order for me to be worthy of love. That's what a lot of people feel. So that's what a lot of people teach, and that's what a lot of people do. But if you're doing that, then essentially what you're doing is you're not signing up for real love, because real love is not conditional. But yet here you are feeling as if you have to meet these conditions in order to achieve love. It's a backdoor approach to something you never really wanted anyway. Focus on being yourself and really understanding the things that you want. I'm not a car guy, for example. I like cars that drive well, but I don't need a Lamborghini to have a car that drives well. Right? I like style, but I like the style that I like. Right? That's really true to me. For example, you have a lot of these videos out now where it's almost like a blueprint, or at least for the past 5 years it was. Right, even longer now, maybe 7, 8 years. Now it's kind of dying down a bit. But 5, 6, 7 years ago, up until about last year, if you had the word millionaire, rich, and a Lamborghini as a thumbnail on your YouTube video, you can pretty much guarantee you will get some views. That doesn't make me want to put the word rich in a YouTube in the title of a YouTube video or put a Lamborghini in the front of the video as a thumbnail. Why? I've never driven a Lamborghini. But if I had to go based on aesthetics, I think a Lamborghini is a very pretty car at the moment. But I don't see myself in it. So it doesn't resonate with me. Right? I didn't have those dreams. I still don't have that dream to drive a Lamborghini. It's an experience I will have, just to have the experience. Maybe in doing it, my mind will change. I'm not sure. But if I had to go off the aesthetic and all of the things that come with it, I'll pass.
So you think that it holds no value to acquire successful traits in order to align yourself with, well,
to align yourself with success.
Yeah.
That holds the value that you give it. There's some value in it. Yes. Absolutely. That doesn't mean that it has to hold, that doesn't mean that it's the end all be all for you. Right? Who's someone that embodies those traits? Maybe a Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson has a very different demeanor and presentation than Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg is very successful. At least financially. He's someone that people would take seriously if he spoke to them as well. Doesn't come across as a dominant person. Right. Actually comes across as a rather antisocial person, but very successful, very prominent in his field, someone that people aspire to meet, aspire to be like. But he doesn't represent those things. Oftentimes he looks nervous, uncomfortable, anxious, guarded, not comfortable, in control, clear, calm, poised. It's not really the demeanor that we get from him.
Nah, think about it. It's so funny that he's like such a leader in our time.
Yeah.
It's like a well-known fact that like he stole the idea.
Yeah, but a lot of people steal ideas. I was just watching something last night that was saying the IP on technological advancement now is no longer protected. The barrier of entry to create a tech product today is so low that the only thing that distinguishes you from your competition is your brand, your distribution, and your relationships. That's the only competitive advantage you have moving forward. Because whatever it is that you're doing that you think is unique, it's not a matter of whether or not if someone will copy you. It's when will they copy you? So how do you set what it is that you're doing apart from what it is that they're doing? It has to be tied to you. In some shape, form, or fashion, you have to control the brand much more than you probably would have had to in the past because the barrier of entry was higher. Right? And when I say tied to you, I don't mean that personally. I don't mean you have to be the brand. But I do mean as someone who is the owner of an organization, you have to be very conscious of the brand if you want to maintain a solid presence in the marketplace. So,
You think some of these traits like stoicism can benefit you though?
definitely. I think they can get you the external things that you want, or at least get you closer to achieving them, for sure. Is it going to bring you real happiness and fulfillment? I have my doubts about that. Because it's not really who you are. And every part of life builds on every part of life. So oftentimes we try to compartmentalize it. But every part of your life affects another part. So the objective is to create harmony across the different aspects of your life.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, it's what do you do for a living? How does that align with what you do when you're not working? Some people do things for a living that they really hate, but it makes them a lot of money. But they carry the stress from that job home with them, which ends up breaking down their families and creating a reality for them that they don't notice themselves moving closer toward. You had a wife, you had a beautiful child. You were doing okay. You wanted to do better. The profession that you were in didn't really pay so well if you were an employee. But there were some transferable skills within that employment opportunity that you could use elsewhere at another employment opportunity that would provide a higher salary, double, maybe even triple in some instances. You saw it as a great opportunity for yourself financially. You saw it as an opportunity for you to provide a better lifestyle for you and your family. You took the opportunity, but you were only thinking about the finances. You weren't thinking about the workload and the stress that comes along with doing that. So although you make the money, you bring the stress home with you. And that stress changes the dynamic of your family. So the very motivating factor that you had to make that decision is the very aspect of your life that suffers from that decision. Because there's a lack of harmony.
What would you recommend someone who wants to climb up in the world to do then? If, let's say, because if you want to climb up, it comes with more stress, I assume.
Yeah.
More workload.
Workload indeed, or a different workload. More stress indeed until you grow accustomed to it. But you can have a stressful situation and still have harmony in your life. It's all about how you process the experience. So all stress is not a bad thing. All stress doesn't lead to a person's demise or the demise of their family structure. And it's easier for that to be true if you have harmony in your life. So you're a person that cares about people, for example, and you feel like you go to work every day and work for an employer that takes advantage of people. At some point, you have an identity crisis. Who you are at work doesn't match who you are when you leave the office. And at some point, you may feel like you need to choose because the waters become muddy. Your identity becomes gray. And there will be a spillover. Either you start to adopt the ways of the workspace or you leave. Typically, you don't influence the workspace very much because it's not the environment that you created. So it doesn't form itself around your norms and values. It forms itself around the norms and values of the entrepreneur. And so, in a lot of instances, the person who doesn't fit is the disturbance. Do they process not fitting as being a failure or as a guide in life, directing them away from where they don't fit in that toward where they do fit in that? For the people who consider it a failure and start trying to force themselves to be successful in that space, those are the people who typically deal with the spillage, because the environment will change you before you change it. So you become more like the environment where you spend the majority of your time, which is work. If you're building a business, and especially if you're an employee, you spend more time at work than you do around your family. Especially the meaningful hours. So over time, being in this workspace changes you. And you bring that person back home. Your family notices it, your friends notice it. And now, you have to decide how you want to move forward in your personal life. Is this something that's actually beneficial for me? And you see a lot of people leave their families. In some instances, that was a good decision because the person that you were being at home wasn't really who you were. You got into an environment that really fed you. You made the shift, or at least felt validated in being who you actually are. And now the person that you were pretending to be, which is the person that your personal friends and the person that your family knew, starts to not exist. In that space, meaning outside of work, you can start to feel very lonely, very alone, because you don't feel like you can be yourself. So maybe that also was a great thing for you to get this job, shift, show who you really are, and possibly take your life into a different direction. That was the story of the guy who built McDonald's. Right? He had a wife, he had a family, he was a salesman, he was an entrepreneur, he was really trying to get things going. Seemed like everything that he did wasn't quite as successful as he may have wanted it to be. He seemed to be doing okay, but wasn't as successful as he wanted to be until he met the two gentlemen that founded McDonald's. And that was a product that he really felt like he could get behind. and it being a product of him that he felt like he can get behind, or a business that he felt like he can get behind. He really took the opportunity to be who he was, and who he was fed that business. It was suitable. Right? He ended up meeting a woman who was like the opposite of his wife. His wife, girl next door, modest woman. Yes, attracted to the finer things in life, but also very grounded. Right? Humble. Supportive, but a cautious optimist. Didn't want you to get your hopes up too high. Whereas another woman that he met, which was actually the wife of one of his partners, saw who he really was and valued it. Spoke life into it. Wasn't trying to dim his light. Saw the potential of what he could be. He ended up leaving his wife for that woman, even though his wife was a great woman. Why did he do that? He thought he could be more of himself, or knew that he could be more of himself, by parting ways with his past life and embarking onto this new journey, encouraged by this new environment that he just become a part of and helped to establish, building what we now know to be McDonald's. So it could be helpful, but there will be some spillage either way. If it's helpful or not, there will be some spillage. Unless you part ways when it's not helpful.
We talk a lot about changing your environment. If you were to coach someone, how would you recommend them to do that?
Slowly. If I were to coach someone on the process of changing their environment, I would encourage them to do it slowly. Because it's a very jarring experience, typically. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you go to a new environment and immediately you get bit by the bug of that environment. Immediately you see how this environment is an extension of you and vice versa. And oftentimes you don't see that right away. Because you have a whole community that you left in the other environment. And that's the part that's challenging. It's not really the environment itself. It's the people that you're connected to in the environment. It's the experiences that y'all share together. That makes it challenging. So I would recommend that for someone who is curious about the impact that an environment can have on their lives, to begin to shift their environment slowly if they're in an environment that doesn't serve them. Go once a week. For example, you want to be wealthy, put yourself around wealthy people. Just feel the energy. Listen to what they talk about. Look at how they dress. Listen to how they communicate with one another, meaning how do rich people greet each other? How do they display their wealth? What do they do with their money? for fun. Because you may not know what they do with their money to acquire more money. But if you go to a restaurant, what are they wearing? Everything that they wear. Because a lot of people who are wealthy do things differently. Right? How do they do that? How do they dress? How do they speak? Where are they? There are wealthy people and poor people in the same city. But somehow they never quite seem to run into each other. Why is that? How is the rich neighborhood structured? How is the poor neighborhood structured? What happens in between? Do you ever see those rich people on the other side? When you do they wear the same clothes? Do they act the same way? If they're wearing their money, do they wear it in a way that people who are not rich would notice? Typically, no. There's a different thread count in that sweater. Do you know how to notice that? That watch is not a Rolex. It's not a watch that you've seen before, but it's expensive. Do you know how to spot that? Those shoes, they're not loud, they're not colorful, they're expensive. That car is expensive. It's not a Ferrari. But it's expensive. It's not a Rolls Royce. It's expensive. How expensive? Is it like a $400,000 or $500,000 car? Maybe 120. Why? Why that car? Why not the family? But women, what accessories do they wear? How do they wear their hair? You go into these restaurants, people have good skin. They have white teeth. They have all of their teeth. Let's start there. Or at least they have no gaps in their smile. I don't mean an actual gap. I mean a tooth that's missing. Do they look healthy? Or do they just have on all of the latest gear? But when you look at them, they themselves, their bodies, do they look healthy? As you get older, that's not cheap. Mainly because of the habits that you have to adopt. They do things differently. If you put yourself in those environments, say once a week, eventually you start to pick up these things. Eventually it starts to rub off on you. Let me go have dinner at the Four Seasons. You probably can only afford it once a month. Do it once a month. Sign up to go look at a house you know you can't afford. Just to have the experience of someone speaking to you as if you could afford it. And giving you the experience that they would give someone who could afford it. Normally, you wouldn't even make it into that house. You would never be able to see it in person. Put yourself in a position to be able to see it in person. Go to the store, go try a Rolex on. You can't afford it yet, just try it on. Don't just imagine it on your wrist, go actually have it on your wrist. Have the conversation with them. Have them give you some champagne and let you think about it. You knew you couldn't afford it when you walked in. It was about the experience. Now that you've had that white glove experience, you're going to want it again. When someone treats you normally, it's going to feel offensive to you, quite possibly. Because for the first time in your life, you experience respect. Chances are you're going to want that again. For the first time in your life, you felt like you were in an environment where you didn't have to be rough around the edges. You could just be you. You could actually be polite and have it be rewarded, as opposed to being polite and having it come across as suspect, having it come across as weakness. You can finally be in a space where you can command respect instead of demanding respect. Give yourself those experiences. And the more you do that, the more you're able to lean into those experiences, the more they become a part of your subconscious, the more they become a part of your perspective, and the more they can actually become real goals and not just dreams. And the more you can see yourself working toward those things, but the more you put yourself in those environments, the more natural it feels to work toward those things and to have those things. And the more natural it feels to have those things, the less you blow them out of proportion, the more they become a standard, the more likely you are to achieve them. Otherwise, oftentimes they remain a dream. People have a hard time making them a must. They remain in this realm of, it must be nice, not that it must be mine. It must be my life, but that it must be nice. So I would encourage people to change their environment slowly. For the most part. There are some people who are ready to change it, and they're intense people, and they don't have an interest in doing it slowly. They want to fully immerse themselves as soon as possible. For those people, they can do it quickly. I would encourage people to do it slowly. And even if they don't move to an environment that is completely, or at least a polar opposite, I think that's a better way to say that. If they don't move to an environment that's a polar opposite of where they're from, at least move away from where you're from to an environment that doesn't resemble where you're from. Or take long trips if you can afford it. Go somewhere where they barely have Wi-Fi and do it alone, solo trip. Those tend to be more impactful than group trips. Although group trips feel more safe because you're not alone in a foreign place. You have some things that are familiar around you. That sense of what's familiar is what can keep a person from unlocking the part of themselves that's not familiar. Introducing themselves to a part of themselves that's new, that they didn't know was there. Which is oftentimes what's needed in order to make the shift that people say they want to make in their lives. That's what I would say.
I'm trying to bring it all back together because at one point it can feel like if I were to observe people that are higher up in life, I would adopt these traits as well. But then is that you?
Exactly. That's the question. Is it you? And if it's not you, should you desire the things that they have? What about what they have is what you desire? Do you really want to drive that car? Or do you want to have the ability to drive that car? Meaning you want to be able to afford it, whether you actually want to buy it or not. If you want to buy it, it's one thing. Do you want to be able to afford it is another thing. People buy things all the time they can't afford it. What does it mean to really live that life? Not just have those things. For the person who's uber rich, what does it mean? What does it mean to them? What does their contribution to the world mean to them? How much do they value that? How does that justify the work that they put in on a day-to-day basis? We see the car. To them, it's just normal. It's standard now. It's an everyday occurrence to them. They understand that they're blessed. But it's not foreign. And because it's not foreign, it can be overlooked until it's not there. It's like you walk into someone's house and say, "Oh, you have a nice house." And you're like, "Thank you." And it's almost as if they forget it until someone else reminds them that their house is nice. They drive a Lamborghini, they forget that they drive a Lamborghini until someone reacts or responds to their car in a certain way. A lot of billionaires don't notice the expensive watch on their wrist anymore. But they would notice it if they couldn't afford it anymore. Because it became the standard. The things that some people will look at and say that's the dream is their everyday lives. So for them, being that it's so real for them and it's so normal for them, it's just another Tuesday. When they start living like everybody else does is when they notice something's wrong or something's different. So, yes, you can get further. You can get further exercising some stoicism. Yes, there are some activities and some mannerisms that you can adopt to attract certain people toward you, to lead certain people or the people that you attract to you, to influence those people, to earn friends. So you may think, but if it's not really who you are, then it's not real. If you're not really building a life based on who you really are, then that life that you built is not really yours. So I'm not saying this to say that it can't help you get those things that you think you want. I'm saying if it pushes you away from being who you really are, then perhaps you should ask yourself, do you really want those things? And is there another way for you to get them, being who you are? And chances are the answer is yes. Chances are the answer is yes.
Something you said earlier, just now, is that environment or your possessions, it raises your standards. How important is it if you want to experience growth to raise your standards, and how do you go about it?
I think the easiest way is environment. You go about it the way I just mentioned, slowly. You can talk, you can also create a virtual environment. Like, it doesn't have to be people in person. A lot of people don't have access to these types of people in person. So you almost have to create it virtually. Join different Discord groups. Join different Facebook groups. You can be on IG. IG is typically, social media gets a bad rap, and understandably so. You can direct your attention on IG and thus direct the experience or control the experience that you have on IG. Right? You can be on IG looking at guns and twerking, or you could be on IG following Tony Robbins, Lisa Nichols, young entrepreneurs that are killing it in the game. 19 years old, making $100,000 a month. They have IG pages. They have YouTube pages. You can follow these people. You don't have to follow the neighborhood rapper. You can control your experience. This is the reach that the internet gives you. This is the reach that social media provides. It's just the other things that are seemingly more distracting for people who don't necessarily have a certain level of intensity attached to the goal that they say they have for themselves.
Let's say you finally figured out what you want to do in life, who you want to be. How do you start allocating time? And do you schedule everything? Like, are you every hour of the day is like scheduled? Like, you have like, all right, I'm waking up, first 3 hours is this, then I don't know, workout at this time, then lunch this time, then do some creative work around this time. So you know you can do everything. Or are you more doing like to-do lists, or are you more?
One more time.
Once you figured out what you want to be,
Yes.
and what you want to do,
Yes.
how do you go about task and time management?
You spend 12 hours a day doing the things that you want to do. Doing things that propel you toward the thing you want to do. That's what I would say. You sleep 8-9 hours. means you got about 3 hours to yourself a day. That includes your workout and anything else that you want to do that requires absolute focus. Otherwise, 12 hours a day on whatever it is that you're going for. Unless it's a goal that you can acquire in 20 years. Some people have those goals, it's super long term. I would say 12 hours a day. At least until you gain some real traction.
How should you spend the other 3 or 4 hours in that day?
However you want to. Gotta leave some room for spontaneity in your life. It sounds good to be, just focus, go away. But it's not really that sustainable. So you want to have some spontaneity in your life and leave some room for life to happen in unexpected ways. But in addition to that, make sure you're really putting in some work towards your goal. 12 hours is a good amount of time per day.
How would you go about dividing that 12 hours?
That's up to you.
I know.
Again, spontaneity. It's up to the person. Right? You don't have to work 12 hours straight. That's also not sustainable. That's not even really, some people will argue it's not possible. Right? To focus for 12 hours straight. Right? But put yourself in a certain environment. For example, if you edit videos and you have an office space in your room where you edit videos, be in that office 12 hours a day. Editing something. And it doesn't really matter if someone else gave you something to edit. Give yourself something to edit. Just edit as much as you can within those 12 hours. Allocate those 12 hours. Schedule them. However you want to do it. But schedule them. And whatever you create there, leave there. So that the other 3 hours that you have to yourself, you really have to yourself. Make sure you're getting proper rest. And that's if you're, of course, like a child. Right? If you're an adult with adult-like responsibilities and things like that, then it becomes a unique experience. Right? But if you're a child, 13, 14 years old, you don't really have any real obligations except to find what you want to do, except to find something that you're passionate about and throwing yourself in it. But if you're an adult with real life responsibilities, then of course that's not feasible to say to do something for 12 hours a day. Do something every day toward that goal. Have an hour, 2 hours a day where you're working on that, whatever that goal is, 7 days a week. Because you have to make up for the time you don't have. So you have to use all the time that you do have to propel yourself closer to that goal. And it doesn't have to be the same activity every day, unless it does. If you want to start a business, there are multiple aspects to the business. If you want to be a great photographer, hone in on photography itself, the trade itself, not actually building a business or an infrastructure to support that trade behind it. Of course, there are multiple aspects to whatever it is that you want to do, including photography.
I want to talk about two things now. I'm going to mention them both so I don't forget. I'm going to sleep. What is sustainable? Should it be something that could be sacrificed for a greater goal? And the other thing I want to talk about is when you're creative, you sometimes don't know in what field exactly you want to be creative. Let's say, do I want to be a screenwriter, DOP, editor? Like, you just know you're very passionate about film. You just don't know exactly what role in that industry you want to take. Where should we start? Which one should we answer first?
I didn't understand the second question.
The question is, how can you find your role in the industry? Meaning, do you have to experiment with a lot of things before you really hone in on one thing? Or should you just hone in on one thing first, and then when you figure out that you don't really like that, try something else after?
Okay. So the first question is about sleep. How important is sleep? Sleep is extremely important. Sleep is the most important. Next to water. Is it disposable? Is it something that can be sacrificed? To an extent. But the objective is to find some consistency in your sleeping habits and maintain that consistency. Because without sleep, the chances of you actually acquiring your goal are much slimmer, just because you don't have the mental capacity to do it. You don't have the stamina to do it. And even if you acquire it, you probably won't have it for very long, because the chance of you having your health for very long is also very slim. And this is, of course, if you're a person that needs an extensive or an average amount of sleep, anywhere between 6 and 10 hours. There's some people who they only need 4 hours of sleep, and they've been doing that for 50 years. Those are different situations, right? They're almost like special cases. In most instances, in my experience, people want to sleep more or need to sleep more than 4 hours a night. So, yes, it is very important. No, it cannot be substituted, at least as far as I know. And if you do sacrifice sleep, make it worthwhile and hope and aim to accomplish something that doesn't require you to continue to sacrifice sleep, or at least helps you to not have to do that in the future, because sacrificing sleep over the long term, it's not sustainable if you want to have good health. As far as a career for a creative that's not exactly sure what they want to be creative in, the objective is to explore. And that's not unique to being a creative, that's anything. So the objective is to explore. Take a handful of different approaches to art and try over. and see which one resonates most with you. And do it again. And do it again. And as many times as you need to until something clicks. In those cases, we have a high level overview of what the passion is, but we don't know exactly what the passion is. Right? So the approach is let your curiosity lead you to your passion. So yeah, try things. Try a lot of things.
So we also sometimes speak about the importance of like focusing on something. Like we talk about like someone like a Donald Glover, who like a multi-talented person, but they focus on one thing, seemingly, but not really.
They focus on one thing at a time.
And even that I question really, because 2016 he did an album as well as the first season of his TV show.
Yeah, but he was already known as a musician. He didn't come out doing everything. He came out as a musician. And he made a strong attempt to instill his brand as a musician and his music into the minds of the consumer. Once he was established in that space, he started to show that he had other talents. Interesting thing today is, with being an artist, you don't always have to do that. Like, you can be a music video director, a choreographer, songwriter, and singer, and do all of them. You can have your first album, or have a single, and then have a movie. Right? Have a movie deal. You can do that in art. But long term, when people ask, what does this person do? If you have all of these things that you do, then they don't know what to hire you for, because they don't really know what you excel at. Right. Kanye West has a lot of talents. He started with music. Even now, even though he's had multiple careers, the people who knew him in 2005 still know him as a rapper, producer. Even though there are people who don't pay attention to that. They only pay attention to him as a fashion icon, because he has a whole career as a fashion icon. But he started here in music. Will Smith started in music. Was the first person in hip hop to win a Grammy. That's major. But he's carved out such a legacy for himself as an actor that there are a lot of people who forget that he was introduced to the world as a musician. Same thing with Queen Latifah. Right? Same thing with Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg started out as a rapper. Mark Cuban. Right? People forget that. A lot of people don't even know that. The Rock. A lot of people don't remember him as a wrestler, when he was the biggest thing in wrestling. Right? He helped expand the brand. He helped expand the whole concept of being a professional wrestler on mainstream level. But now he's such a brand as an actor, or at least it got to a point where he was such a brand as an actor. There were a lot of people who didn't even think about him being a wrestler anymore. Now he's such a brand as a business person. There's some people that don't think about any of those things that he did to get to that space. They don't think about football. They don't think about wrestling. They don't think about acting. He has one of the biggest tequila brands. This is something you wouldn't associate with him. He's breaking records with tequila. You associated him as a health person, not as someone who was focused on drinking or ever had a drink, because we never saw him with drinks. We never saw him as like a party animal or anything like that, and he still isn't. At least that's not the brand that he's trying to create. He established that really quickly, it seemed. Okay. And then it's like, okay, well, is he moving away from that too? Is that just something that he has in the background? He's a businessman. He's this astute, upper echelon gentleman that works really hard. You see him in suits, you see him changing his presentation. He's not only in workout gear, jumping out of pickup trucks. His presentation is much more professional, much more classic, more grown and sexy, more business related, leaning way more toward being an entrepreneur. What do they do from time to time? They go out and have a drink. Tequila. Right. So, this is someone who you know what you like him for. Because when he rebrands very strongly. He didn't come out saying, I'm doing all of this at once. He wasn't wrestling and dropping the tequila. Right? But he had more of a business approach, less of a creative approach. Because creative people are creative people. The expectation is almost, people kind of expect you to be all over the place as a creative. Right? Because you never know where the creativity is going to come from. So the expectation is kind of for you to be, this person that just kind of floats through life, doing all the cool things. Because they're looking for creativity. They're looking for a way to inspire the world, and they don't know where that inspiration is going to come from for themselves. But you kind of stay in that creative space that way. If that's what you're interested in as a creative, then do that. But there's some people who are creative, they don't know what they want to be creative in, and they end up being creative in business. Right? It takes creativity to be a good marketer. It takes creativity to be a successful entrepreneur in general. So you don't have to play an instrument, make a beat, shoot a music video, write a verse, play with different fabrics and stitch them together in a certain way to see what you can come up with. That's not the only type of creator there is. Right? Or play a sport. There are a lot of people who play a sport very creatively. And then there's people who grow that sport creatively, market that sport, brand that sport, find different loopholes in business to help maintain that sport long enough for it to become something. That's what Dr. Buss did with the Lakers. Changed the game of basketball. The game of basketball was not like that before him. And it's still the same formula today. So, it's not only one type of creative. That person is not always playing an instrument or dwells within the realm of being an artist. There's creativity everywhere. Explore it. Find what that thing is for you. And when you find it, spend as much time as you possibly can creating something that not only serves you, but society at large. And stick with it. You gotta do it for years, oftentimes. Because there's a lot of hiccups along the way. The interest that you say you have or the passion that you say you have will be tested. In some instances, it's tested before you have your break. And you have some people who have their break in whatever it is that they're doing, and it just seems like it's smooth sailing for them because they took all of their lessons before they were known. And sometimes we get to see it play out. But either way, have it in your heart, not just in your head. And try things. Right? Because when it's in your heart, you find a way to make it a reality. When it's in your head, chances are you overthink it. And talk yourself out of doing it, even though you tell yourself it's something that you're passionate about. We can see that you're not passionate about it because you don't execute on it. So, for example, Kobe Bryant said, when he was asked, how did you play the game with a torn Achilles? He said, if I was laying on the couch with a torn Achilles and the house was on fire and my daughter was stuck upstairs, what would I do? I would run upstairs and get my daughter. I would completely forget about this torn Achilles. Why? He loves his daughter. It's in his heart. Go get your child. Not think about, oh, what's the best way? It's not convenient to run upstairs right now. Let me wait till the fire is over and then go upstairs and see how she's doing. No, I'm going to go upstairs right now, even though my Achilles is ripped. That's passion. Let me play the game, even though my Achilles is ripped. Probably not the most intelligent thing to do. But that's passion. And oftentimes people say that they're passionate about things that they're not passionate about. Because I would see it, we would see it, if you were really passionate about it. Now, granted, some people are honing their skill set, they're passionate, but they're honing their skill set or what have you. But when put on the spot, if put on the spot, you would have something there, some body of work that says, I'm passionate about this. When I was writing music, I wrote music for 10 years before anybody really knew that I did it. But I was writing twice a day, honing my skill set. Maybe I wasn't confident or comfortable enough to share with the world, but if put on the spot, I at least had verses. Whether you liked it or not was a different thing. But I could show you books on top of books on top of books on top of books of what I was doing. It wasn't just, yo, I like this, but I don't have anything to show it. I'm passionate about this, but I don't have anything to show my passion. I have things to show my passion when I'm passionate about it. Because it was in my heart. If something is happening with your mom and she says, I need you to be here as soon as possible, you would make it there. It wouldn't be like, yo, let's wait till traffic, cools down. You would find a way to get there, even if you had to run there. That's because it's in your heart. When it's in your head, you start rationalizing. You start trying to be logical. And sometimes it's good. Not always. Passion doesn't live in your head. It gets lost there. And anything that can get lost in your head, you're probably not so passionate about. The things that you have in your heart don't get lost in your heart. They get amplified in your life because you have an emotional attachment to them. So for the artist or for the creative who is looking to figure out how they can create, where they can create, what they can create, create. If you're really passionate about it, you would create something. And let that curiosity lead you to the thing that you're most passionate about, to the form of creativity that you're most passionate about. And you would share that with the world.
One more thing, I actually want to go back to what we just talked earlier about sleep. I hear a lot of like motivational speakers, like or like public figures like 50 Cent or like what you call them? Like that motivational speaker, the black guy, the man that was E.T. They always talk about, y'all like to sleep so much. And
so y'all love sleep more than you love success.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes I mean like 50 something, you gotta sacrifice that sleep.
You do.
I sometimes don't know what to make of it. Like, am I supposed to sleep my like 8 hours? Should I not?
You have to, typically, if you're going to sacrifice sleep, you sacrifice sleep, but short term. Right? The objective shouldn't be to sacrifice sleep for the next 30 years. And what does it mean to sacrifice sleep? 2 hours? Cool. Are you breaking night? Do you anticipate breaking night all week? It's probably not going to happen. It's probably not the healthiest thing to do either. That's what Kanye did. He was sacrificing sleep. That led to a car accident that almost killed him. But that car accident that almost killed him actually became his breakthrough. Right? Sacrificing sleep, but learning how to do that. Right? I'm not saying don't sacrifice sleep ever. I'm saying there's probably not a whole lot of longevity in you sacrificing sleep. Unless you find a healthy balance, a healthy way to do it. So sacrificing sleep could be, instead of sleeping 8 hours, I sleep 5 hours. That's sacrificing sleep. Right. Eventually you catch up. Okay, on the weekend, one day, Saturday, I sleep, 10 hours. And then I'm back to 5 hours. Okay. Some people could do 5 hours for 10 years. Okay. But you're not doing 2 hours. Rick Ross did that. Led to seizures. Right? On top of other things, of course. Right? The lifestyle and etc. It catches up with you. Even if you're healthy, quote unquote. Because you can't really be healthy if you sacrifice sleep for an extended period of time. So yeah, you may not be able to sleep 8 hours. Get 5 in. Get a consistent 5 in. The Rock does that. Get a consistent 5 hours of sleep in. And let that be quality. Do everything that you can to make sure that those 5 hours are quality. And then do whatever it is that you want to do. Pursue whatever it is that you want to pursue. But to not sleep at all, because that's what it sounds like when someone says sacrifice sleep. And those are the examples that they give as well. Right? E.T. gave that example. One time Beyonce was out here, she was preparing for a tour, she was preparing for a show, she forgot she didn't eat. She didn't go to sleep. She didn't sleep in 3 days. I know what that's like. When I was in college, we used to have that. Engineering student. Finals, you're up. You are up. Coffee never did anything for me. And I wasn't the type of person that was interested in drugs. So Adderall and all of those things, I wasn't doing that. But I was up. Which is why I know that there's some truth in when people say, you're not tired, you're uninspired. There's some truth in that. Because I was definitely inspired to pass those exams, and that's why I was awake. Because under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have been awake. Even in years when we were out clubbing, having a good time, I thought that was inspiration. Yeah, I may have broken one night. I may have stayed up 2 days in a row, maybe a day and a half. But it was only when I was in college that I was staying up 2-3 days in a row. That didn't really happen before. And if I did go to sleep, I went to sleep two hours here, 2 hours there. I wasn't sleeping for a long period of time. It wasn't an 8-hour night during finals. I don't think I ever did that in college. I don't think I ever did that. I think the most I ever got was probably 6. But a full 8-hour night of rest in college during finals. And I had to learn how to study in order to do that. I had to really be putting that work in throughout the whole year in order to do that. In order for finals to come rolling around. And I was sleeping 6 hours the night before the exam. Because in the beginning of being a college student, I thought I knew how to study, but I didn't know how to study. And that was proven to me the first test that I took in physics. And got the lowest grade I ever got in my life, a 30 on a test. When the highest score was 100, I got a 30. And that gave me inspiration to stay up. Because for me, education was the way out. That was the only way that I was gonna, and at that time, my family was my motivation. So the only way that I was gonna get my family out of the hood was to go to school, be the first one to graduate, get a job, a high-paying job, and be able to pull them out of the hood and into a different environment. So hopefully they can see what was possible for them and they can do it too. That was the objective. When I got a 30 on that exam, I felt the hunger that I had never felt before. Prior to failing that exam, that was the best thing that could have happened to me in my collegiate experience. That inspired me to stay up 3 days in a row. No coffee, no Adderall, no anything. A lot of sugar, but that was about it. So there is something to, you're not tired, you're uninspired. But there's a limit to that. Know that limit, respect that limit. And try not to get as close as you possibly could to that limit. Because that's a slippery slope. Right? Give yourself a little bit of a buffer. But indeed, when you're in pursuit of a dream, when you're in pursuit of a goal, rather, not a dream, but a goal, inspiration is typically your alarm clock. And so the likelihood of you sleeping 8 hours a night is slim. The likelihood of you being bothered or somehow feeling slighted by sacrificing a bit of your sleep is probably not something you're going to feel. But not sleeping at all, sleeping 2 hours a night, 3 hours a night, that has adverse effects. chances are that will lead to unfavorable consequences that will keep you from actually attaining the goal that you're sacrificing your sleep for, or maintaining it, because sacrificing sleep at that level is not sustainable, usually.
So it's kind of like, sometimes they give you this concept of like, when it comes to attaining something, it's like harvest season, where there's a couple months in the year where you just work 18 hours a day.
Yes.
But it's only for a short period of time.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great metaphor. And it's a great metaphor because it's seasonal. It's not something that you do over an extended period of time. It's even like circadian rhythm. In the summertime, you get less sleep. You eat more sugar. Why? There are more fruits available. There's more light available. In the wintertime, you don't eat so much fruits. You eat more fats and you sleep more often. Right? So it's seasonal. And that's because your body is not a machine. It's a system. Right? A system has ebbs and flows. There's not this constant way of being. That's what machines do.
When do you know when it's harvest season?
When do you know when it's harvest season?
Because life doesn't give you exams. It does, but not literally.
No, it does. Life gives you literal exams. Real exams. And sometimes the test is 2 years. Sometimes the test is 2 minutes. That's where the concept of stay ready so you don't have to get ready comes from. Right? So you decide when it's time to harvest. Do you want to, what does it mean for you? It's like training. Like, when is bulking season? When you want to shred, you can decide that. You don't have to shred in the summertime. Some people bulk in the summertime. Some people shred in the wintertime. Some people have 2 seasons where they either bulk or shred. It's not really anything in between. They don't maintain like an in-between aesthetic. They're either super lean or they're bulking up. And then you have some people that just coast. They grow over time, right? They have created a system where they harvest, reap the benefits, harvest, reap the benefits. They have created that system for themselves. That's what we all have to do. We all have to create that system for ourselves. Unless you have a career that's giving you instructions as to when to do that. But even then, you still have to follow those instructions. And you still have to create an infrastructure in your life that supports you following through on those instructions. And sometimes that's the part that we miss. Sometimes it's not the instruction that we're looking for, or not the instruction that is the problem for a lot of people. Sometimes it's not building the infrastructure that supports you following through on the instruction, that keeps you from following through consistently. So it doesn't work long term.
When you have a degree in something that's a bit not ambiguous but very broad, and when you're trying to apply yourself for a position, sometimes it can feel like you lack the experience, but then you need to start somewhere in order to get the experience.
Yeah.
What's a good place to start?
That's a numbers game. It's like it's like going to college, studying, coming out of college, and being a recent grad and going to apply for a job at an entry level position. But at the entry level position, you need 3 years of experience. Right. So I understand that. It's like a catch-22. That's a numbers game. So you got to keep applying to different jobs. And in that process, you learn how to interview. Right? You learn what they're looking for. And the better you get at that, the more likely you are to land a position. But it's just a numbers game in the beginning because you don't have any experience. So you're pretty much looking for someone who sees your potential. That's always what you're looking for as a recent graduate, unless you have a host of different internship opportunities that you have experienced and a bunch of different recommendations or referrals from people at these internships. If you don't have that, then it's just a numbers game. Because a lot of that criteria attached to a job description is really it's really part of the screening process. Is to weed certain people out and save the recruiter some time. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't make an honest effort to present the best version of yourself. But understand that it's a numbers game. The more you do it, the better you get at it. But you tend not to improve at anything unless you're given 100%. And this is no exception to that. So give 100% effort to actually landing a position. Meaning you may apply to 15 jobs a day and not hear anything back for 2 months. Keep going. Figure something else out. Don't just sit on the computer applying to jobs all day. Right? That's not how you find a job. Right? Especially not today. There are too many outlets. There are too many opportunities for you to impress a recruiter, for you only to be online applying to a position. You don't stand out that way. What company do I want to work for? Why do I want to work for that organization? What is it about this company that speaks to me? What's the future of this organization? How does what they're doing right now contribute to that future that they say they have? Is that inspiring or exciting to me? Is it? Yes, great. Let's go on LinkedIn. Let's see who works at that organization. Let's send each and every one of them a message. And let's ask let's start a conversation with them. After starting a conversation with them, okay, you writing back and forth, it seems as if you have some rapport with them. Great. Have a conversation with them and say, hey, would you like to have a coffee with me? I can pick your brain. Of course, don't use those words. Right? But make it useful for them as well. Hey, I have this interest in this thing. I think that, it's something that may interest you. Would you be willing to have a coffee with me so I can explain to you what it is? Great. Yeah, definitely. I'll be interested in having a coffee with you. Cool. They have a coffee with you. You have a full-out presentation about what's happening at their organization, where the voids in their organization, how you think your skill set can help them fill that void. They share that information with the right person. That person gets in contact with you. Then you present your resume. Then you present what you can, what you imagine for your future with this organization over the next 3 to 5 years. Ask someone who has no experience, quote unquote. Right? But it's not just sitting at home filling out applications. It's more than that.
Would you recommend someone fresh out of college, so to speak, to get a position somewhere or do freelance work?
You don't really have you don't have a real skill or enough experience to do freelance work for a lot of students that are just leaving college. If you do have a real skill and you're really good at it, do freelance work. Especially if you have the ambition on being an entrepreneur, do freelance work. But ideally, even if you have a great skill, come out of college, get a job for a year or two just to learn business. Right? You're not there as an employee necessarily. You're more so there as an apprentice to learn business, learn as much as you possibly can about it, then go into freelance work, then build a team and have an actual payroll. But typically it benefits you not to skip steps, right? It's like Robert Kiyosaki's quadrant. You start as an employee, you go to a small business owner, go to a larger business owner, then you become an investor. That's the quadrant. Tend not to want to skip steps because there's information and wisdom at each step that can be useful in the next step. And whatever you don't know, you will pay for. So try to know as much as you possibly can within reason. But another thing to know is, what should you pay for instead of trying to learn yourself? And that comes from the experience of doing it.
Can you elaborate?
A founder of an organization doesn't do everything at the organization to sustain and grow the organization. Typically, they have employees. Employees do the things that the founder cannot do. Either they don't have the time or they don't have the expertise. What things can you do that you don't have time for? What things do you have time for, but you probably still shouldn't do because it doesn't maximize the return on your time? That comes from wisdom. That comes from the experience of being at a company, going through the different stages of becoming an entrepreneur. For example, if you've owned a company before, you're likely to be a better investor because you know what it takes to run an organization. So you know how to spot a good organization faster than someone who's never had one, typically. In order to build a big business, chances are you need to have some experience with a small business, running a small business. How do you run a small business if you can't run yourself? That's freelance work. That's being an independent contractor. And the skills you learn as an employee help you to be a better boss. Are you dependable? Are you predictable? Do you show up on time? Do you have integrity? Do you have dignity? Why is dignity important as an employee? Because then it matters to you what you present. The quality of your work matters to you when you have dignity. If you don't, then you just turn in anything. Or you're more likely to. Right? So in each phase of becoming a business person or a more established business person, you learn something that helps you at the next phase. It's not just intelligence. You need wisdom. It's not just being smart. You need the wisdom. What is wisdom? Why is it not being smart? Why is it not just being intelligent? To be smart just means that you have a lot of information at your disposal. You remember a lot of facts. Right? That's what it means to be smart. And you can You can utilize or employ your knowledge of those facts in a proper sequence to get a favorable result. That's being smart, right? What does it mean to be intelligent? Right? Intelligent comes from the word intellect, right? Being an intellectual. What does that mean? That means you can take these facts that you know because you're smart. You could break them apart. You could flip them upside down. You can turn them inside out. You can look at them from an angle and put them together, put them back together in a way that provides new insights and present those new insights in an organized, detailed, and concise manner. That's what it means to be intelligent, right? Now you need experience, because it's great that you created this logical argument, but logic doesn't equal truth. That's the curse of the intelligent. They can make anything make sense. We could all make up a logical lie right now. Experience exposes you to truth. Now, once you have that truth, now what? That's when you have the ability to become wise. What is wisdom? Wisdom is applied truth. Taking that truth and applying it in a way that allows you to reap the benefits from life. Or at least the aspects of life that favor that truth, the application of that truth. That's why you want to go through the experiences and not try to skip a step. I used to try to skip steps. I wanted to expedite my way to success, and I thought that was skipping steps. And it's not. It's exposure. It's exposure, experiencing faster. It's gaining exposure sooner. That's how you expedite the process, not by skipping steps. Right? And experience is not how long you did something. Experience is what you encountered throughout the time that you did it. It doesn't matter that you did something for 40 years that took you 2 weeks to learn. If you didn't encounter certain things that allowed you to learn more. Otherwise, you don't have 40 years of experience, because it doesn't take 40 years to learn how to do that thing. You have 2 weeks of experience repeated over a 40-year period. But you don't have 40 years of experience.
Do you think school systems emphasize that enough? Especially the intelligent part. The smart part is very obvious that they do.
No, I don't think schools highlight the importance of intelligence enough in most cases. The great schools, the schools that we know to train and attract some of the brightest minds, do that. That's why I transferred as a college student sooner than I anticipated transferring. I started in a city school, right? Meaning like a local school, not a private institution or statewide institution. And the reason why I did that is because I didn't want to go away and be paying for something that I can get at home for free. Typically, when you go away to school is when you start taking out loans. If you stay within your community or within your city, they paid us to go to school. Right? They gave us a stipend per semester to pay for our books, to pay for all of these things that we may have needed to make success more likely for us as a student. Right? Of course, you finesse that situation. You buy books secondhand. You do these different things. In some instances, you just don't need the amount of money that they're giving you. They're giving you that money because they have budget for it and they have to get rid of it. And so you get a refund, right? A student refund check at the end of every semester, if I remember correctly, or at least once a year, right? So that was them paying us to go to school. So actually, I wasn't going to school for free, right? They were paying me to go. And I had a friend, we went to the same high school, and I was kind of coasting my way through my undergraduate experience, especially my freshman year. It wasn't really my studies that were challenging, it was my living experience that was challenging, my personal life. But as far as school was concerned, I was kind of coasting my way through it. And here's this guy, we both went to high school. I knew that he was a rather bright gentleman, and he was struggling in college. He was at a university though, a private institution. And you hear all the time that they teach you differently. They teach these kids that can pay this amount of money and afford this type of education differently than they teach these kids who can't afford that education. But then they also tell you school is what you make it. So if you study hard, if you get every book that you can possibly get your hands on and read it, understand everything in it, then you should be fine. So you don't really know how to decipher between these two, right? And if you're someone who doesn't have access to the resources, you take the latter route, right? I'm gonna just read everything that I possibly can. I'm gonna try to get my hands on everything that I can possibly get my hands on and dissect it to the best of my ability. But when you don't know what you don't know what to ask. You don't know what you're looking for. So yeah, you can only do as good as your imagination takes you. And sometimes your imagination is not true, right? It's not really something that's going to help you directly. Yes, it can help you indirectly, but it's not always something that's going to help you directly. That's why guidance is important. Mentorship is important. And that's pretty much what professors do in college and in universities. So long story short, he's on the phone stressed out telling me about how he failed his tests and all these different things, and he just doesn't get it. And I was confused by that because I'm like, I know he's intelligent. We went to the same high school. How is it that I'm coasting through college? I got a 3.5 and I'm barely studying. And he's below a 3.0. He's like a 2.5 and he's saying he's studying all the time. So he says, okay, Ali, smart guy, solve this problem for me. He told me the problem. I had never heard of or seen what he was talking about ever before in my life. And that's how I knew it was time for me to transfer. Immediately. He told me that maybe 4 months into our freshman year. By the following year, first day of our sophomore year, we were in the same school. Right? Because I saw that the school that I was in did not emphasize intelligence enough. The school that he was in, which eventually became the school that we both graduated from, did emphasize intelligence. The school that I was going to was just telling me a bunch of facts and giving me a test where I had to regurgitate those facts. I was good at that. The school that I eventually transferred to, which was the school he was at before I got there, was a school that gave me all the facts, gave me all the theory, but they never gave me the same problem twice. And it was never a problem where I was just regurgitating information. It was a problem where I was applying the ideas that I had learned theoretically to a practical, real life situation that I'd never seen before. That was valuing intelligence. Whereas the school that I was at prior to that was only valuing my ability to remember and regurgitate facts. So, are there schools that highlight the importance of intelligence? Yes. But typically, they come with a steep tab.
Worth the price?
Yes, it is worth the price. It is worth the price.
Nice. How do you know when you're overworking? Like when you let's say you have a goal and you're trying really hard,
Mm-hmm.
but one things ain't taking off.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes hard to see is this a test?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have the diligence or is it just not for me?
Mm-hmm.
And two, when you're working very diligently, sometimes that also can have health problems with it, like breakdowns and we call those meltdowns. What do we call it?
Burnouts.
Burnouts. Yeah. When do you know also then that you're working too hard? Is there such thing?
There's definitely such a thing. Burnout is real. You got to listen to your body. You have to work to become connected enough to yourself to hear yourself and listen to yourself. In a society that conditions us to focus on out-of-body experiences only, it can be hard to understand what's happening internally. So you have to train yourself on that. And there's no one way to do that. Right? Some people exercise. That's how they land in their bodies. Right? Otherwise, they're just in their heads. Okay. Some people meditate. That's how they land in their bodies. Right? Some people sleep. Sleep is a form of therapy for some people. Some people go to physical therapy, and that's how they land in their bodies. But your mind doesn't tell you that you're having a burnout. Your body does. Your body can send your mind signals, right? You may be experiencing migraine headaches. You never had that before, right? You may be experiencing dizziness and blurred vision. You never had that before. Those are signs that your body can send to your mind and say, hey, this is going too far. What is really about landing in your body, feeling your body, and being able to hear your body tell you when enough is enough. And again, that's different for everyone. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to forget about our bodies. And again, in a society that's conditioning us that your mind is the only thing that matters, it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to feel as if your body is just a means of transportation for your head. And not that your body is something that should be catered to. Because it in itself is the actual vehicle and memory bank of experience. Without your physical health, you don't have anything. And your body is extremely important. Some people argue if you don't have your mental health, you don't have anything. I wouldn't say you don't have anything. But life would definitely be less fruitful without your mental health. But don't forget about your body. Your body is important. When your mom was pregnant, they was checking if she was actually pregnant. They checked for a heartbeat. They didn't check for brain function. Your body is important. Your heart is not in your head.
Coming back to like the first thing that I wanted to ask was like, no one want to keep going. I know maybe as she perhaps went to call it quits or move into a different direction.
Some of that is rationale and some of it is intuition. It's like, what makes sense? Can I get behind this emotionally? And what does my spirit say? If all those things are aligned, then you'll move in a different direction easily. If they're not, then you're going to have conflict.
And when that happens?
When conflict happens, typically you have an experience that doesn't feel good, but it serves you. You need some stimuli to help you align with yourself, to help your mind align with your heart, and your heart align with your intuition. And usually, if your heart doesn't align with your intuition, that means that your ego is too loud. You can't hear your intuition because you're so distracted by your ego. Your ego is telling you to continue to pursue something that doesn't really hold a positive future for you. But because that ego is so loud, you believe it as truth.
How do you gauge what is speaking to you?
Experience. That's why you can't skip it. It's the only way you learn the difference between intuition and fear. Having enough experiences to know which one sounds like what. Where do I feel this in my body? And how to process that feeling. To know what it is and where it's coming from. You don't get around life, regardless of how intelligent you are. No one is exempt. You need experience.
In your pursuit of your goals, time allocation and anything, how much can that still be spent on friends and your relationship with friends? Should you even tell them about the goals, or is it more like you're just gonna work and then they'll eventually see or catch up?
That depends on the friends. Sometimes you have universal friends. Those are friends that you can speak to about anything. If you're going through some hardship in life, you can speak to them about that. If you are in a fun mood, you can laugh and joke with them. If you want to go to the club and turn up, you can go to the club with them. If you have a situation that needs to be addressed in person, they'll go with you. They'll help you to address that situation and make sure that you, or at least to the best of their ability, make sure that you return from that situation in the same or at the same level of health and fitness that you approach that situation with. That's a universal friend. Some friends you can only call when you want to turn up. If you want to go to the club, you want to have a good time, you can call them ASAP. But if you're going through a real life experience, if somebody in your family passed away, if you got fired from your job, if your business is not doing so well and you're kind of in a slump and you need some reassurance, you need some words of wisdom, you need some encouragement, you can't call them. Right? So it depends on the friend. It depends on the situation. As to who you decide to share your goals with and what you're working on. And if it's going to be worth your time to do that. In some instances, it'll be very much worth your while. In other instances, maybe not so much. Depends. You have to gauge who your universal friends are, if you have any, and who aren't. And if you don't have any universal friends, then it's sharing, being more strategic about what you share with whom, if you decide to share those things at all.
Or what do you think of being in business with friends?
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But typically it changes your relationship with them. And it can strengthen your relationship or it can weaken your relationship. As friends.
You think it's worth finding out?
Sometimes. Sometimes there's real value that can be offered by this friend, and there's real value that can be offered by you to this business. Sometimes. And it also depends on the nature of your friendship. Right. There's some friends that are, you know them, you like them, you love them. There's a ceiling to it. And there's some friends that feel like family, where there's no ceiling and you feel like you've known them your whole life. Those relationships you might not want to play with so much. The relationships that, or the friends that feel like family, you may not want to tamper with those relationships. But the relationships that kind of have a ceiling, it's more of a practical friendship, right? It's like, If I need help with this, I call this person. We hang out from time to time, but it's really like, it feels a bit more transactional. Then that's a friendship that may lend itself well to business. Some people would then argue, how can you trust that person? Right? Why would you go into business with someone like that? Why would you not go into business with someone that's more like family? Because then you trust that person a bit more. Because you don't want to tamper with the relationship that you have with the person that's more like family. And in business, even if you trust someone, right, personally, on paper, it should probably look like you don't. On both sides. Because things change. And in business, you want to make sure that you protect yourself every opportunity that you get in a way that's fair. And if you trust the person and the person trusts you, chances are that won't be a problem. It's not a problem for your business to reflect the relationship that you have. In the same way you have guardrails in your relationship, your personal relationship with a person. Right? You don't want to disrespect them. You don't want to say things that are hurtful to them. You want to stay in your lane. It's the same thing that happens in business. So, if you really have a relationship that you think you have with that person, and a person is mature enough to go into business with, you have some people that are really mature in life, not so mature in business. Right? Or at least mature, let me say mature in certain aspects of life, but not mature in the aspect of business. So you have to gauge that and see what makes the most sense for you in your relationships and your business.
And when it comes to ethics in business, sometimes you hear like, you gotta make sacrifices, but like in an unethical way sometimes to move up.
Then it becomes who decides what's ethical. If you're going against your own morals, perhaps that's a problem. But some people would say to not go against your own morals means you're not growing. If you're not contradicting yourself at some point in the future, you haven't grown. If you tell me something now, if you tell me the same thing you said now, 10 years from now, I could potentially question, have you grown as a person? So some people see the ethical conversation or doing things that are against your ethics as something that should be acknowledged on a case-by-case basis. And I would agree with that. Sometimes your morals are being stretched, not rejected, not ignored. That's a slippery slope. And oftentimes we make mistakes in trying to navigate that and understand it. But it is necessary, not only for growth in business at times, but also, or more importantly, for growth as a person.
To question your ethics.
To question and challenge your ethics.